her heart may well regret, but I'll never stop believing. She can never stop my schemes. There's more to living than gloves and gowns and threads and seams. All my life I've always wanted to have one day for myself, not waking up with a pile of work on every shelf, with no hems in need of pressing and no sleeves in disarray, no wedding gown with 1,000 stitches to crochet, and no debt to pay. First I choose a fabric from the rack, and I pin the pattern down, and I stitch it in the front and back, and it turns into a gown. I'm just like you. I think that's true. You're just like me. Yes, I can see. We take responsibility. We carry through, do what we need to do. Yes, I am a girl like you.
Day one of making Ariana Grande's Grammy dress, and yes, it's day one because this is huge. The original dress took 200 hours. I don't have that time, so I have a hoop skirt. That stain is from a project gone wrong. I got the skirt and the mannequin from Amazon. We don't need these, so yeet them. Step one, we have to cover this. We're gonna make a skirt using 5 yards of 108-inch fabric. I used this app to calculate how much I need. It gives you your waist, how much fabric you need, and a diagram. I laid it out on the ground, folded it over, and I marked out our skirt. Time to cut and sew. So there's a skirt on the mannequin, now it's time for the tulle. I'm going to use 12 yards of it for the bottom part of the skirt. I'm using a regular foot with a basting stitch to gather. Now I have to hand gather this to a manageable amount. Okay, pinned on, time to sew down. Now repeat till you get to the top. Your final layers go all the way to the floor. Come back for part 2. Day 2 of making Ariana Grande's dress. First, we need a pattern. This pattern is free. It's not perfect, but we can modify it. Download and print. Once printed, go ahead and cut. Measure your piece to the mannequin and adjust where you need to. Once you cut your pieces, it's time for fabric. I'm making mine black because I don't want to be sued. You're going to cut each piece 4 times. You should get 2 layers, one for the outside and one for the corset. We'll start with the corset. Stitch together with a 1/2-inch seam. Stitch down the excess to make a boning channel. Time for bones. Try it on the mannequin. It looks good, so on to the next. Repeat for this layer what you did for the corset. And press. Quickie break. Lay 6-inch strips of tulle at an angle. I'm using weights to hold down the folds. She's all pinned down, so it's time to sew. Stitch the 2 bodices together. Come back for part 3. Day 3 of making Ariana Grande's dress. I'm going to show you how to make that middle ruffle today. Start by cutting 10 yards of tulle. That's 10 yards. I folded the tulle in half, and now it's time to baste. Hand gather it. Look at that fluffy noodle. Fold your noodle in half and stitch. Now you're just going to repeat until you feel like dying. 20 yards, 30 yards, 40 yards. Got it. Quickie break. The final ruffle. Cut 1 more layer of tulle to attach the ruffle to. Oh my. Gather the final piece. And there you have it. Come back to part 4. Recreating Ariana Grande's dress in black. First, you're going to need a waistband. I drafted mine myself. It'll look like this when it's cut. Get your tulle. I'm using 6-inch tulle. Take your tulle and start to baste. Gather it down, stitch down, and then repeat until done. Yeah, next step is to keep on and gather. That's what you gather. Quickie break. Stitch your tulle to the waistband. Attach the ruffle, and when you're done, I'll stitch it together in part 5, and then she'll be ready to wear. Final part of making Ariana Grande's dress. First, take her off the mannequin. Next, you're going to want to sew down the 2 additional layers of tulle you added because you didn't think it was big enough. Next, you're putting the grommet. Mark 6 holes on each side. Cut your holes open. Push your grommet through, add your back, and hammer. Grommets are in, time to sew it to the dress. Grab some lacing, and now it's time. Give her a trim. And here's your cost breakdown. I'll post the full shoot Thursday.
Today we are are making one of my most requested dresses ever on TikTok, and that is Rose's sink dress from Titanic, the one that she goes into the water in. I started the process by creating my pattern on my dress form. I used a cotton muslin just to get everything where I wanted it, and then outlined it on the dress form. Afterwards, I made my pattern perfect, and then I cut it out of my fabric. Next, I started stitching the base of the bodice together, and I thought it was the perfect opportunity to use my brand new Panasonic 360 iron. It's cordless, it's lightweight, and it presses my seams flat and beautiful. Now let's start creating the pleats that are going to create the bodice of the dress. After I've got them all pinned out in the different color sections, I'm just going to use my Panasonic iron and steam them while they're there to help them hold their shape. Her nightgown look had this delicate lace at the top of the bodice as well as running down the front of the dress, so I'm going to be creating that as well. The last step is to attach the 3 layers of chiffon skirt, and because it's chiffon, you need to give it a good press. I am so proud of the way this recreation came out. I love the way it moves in the wind, and I think it really captures the essence of Rose's dress. Today I'm discount fabric shopping because I'm going to make a $20 wedding dress for you. I found this beautiful gray lace that has a smoky amethyst undertone to it. I thought it could be a really fun way to interpret a modern wedding dress. My favorite way to design is by looking at the past for inspiration, so I'm going to be using some elements of the 1940s and the 1950s wedding dresses for inspiration for this. After creating my pattern and cutting out my fabric, I started to stitch the bodice together. After stitching, I pressed everything flat and beautiful on the appropriate setting so I did not burn the lace. Now let's overlock those edges. Now let's work on our sleeves. I'm going to have a cap sleeve and I'm going to keep them sheer because I think it will add some dimension to the dress. Now let's gather our skirt and sew in the lining and attach this beautiful crystal trim that I found as a belt. I'm really pleased with the way this dress came out. I think it's a really interesting take on a classic style wedding dress. Also, don't forget I'm doing a massive giveaway including a free sewing machine on my Instagram, and there's a link in my bio. Let's surprise my mom for Christmas. She said that she loved Nicole Kidman's coat from The Undoing, so let's make it for her and send it off to her at the end of the video. I started the process by creating the pattern, and I really wanted to get the shape right, although I did make a few modifications so that my mom would like it a little bit more. I'm using this beautiful mossy green boiled wool from Mood Fabrics because it was the closest that I could find to the actual fabric, and the texture was so beautiful I couldn't resist it. After stitching the outside of the jacket together and inserting the sleeves, I started to work on the welt pockets. This style of pocket is very tricky to do, but the best part about the process is pressing everything flat and beautiful because it's such a gratifying process. My favorite part about Nicole Kidman's jacket was the massive hood that she had, so I made sure to include one as well. The last step of the process is to sew in the lining as well as to add the buttonholes and the buttons to the outside of the jacket. I could not be more excited about the way this coat turned out. That hood is so magical and this silhouette is so chic. It's very Nicole Kidman. Now let's pack it up and ship it off to Tennessee, and look how cute my mom looks in it. She was so happy. My friend Official Hamley sent me a box of fabric, and this one gives me such Tim Burton vibes, so let's make a dress fit for one of his films. I want this garment to have a peasant dress kind of feel, so what I'm going to do is create the pattern and perfect it using this ruler. After getting the shape I like, I'll then draw lines that I will cut and then spread the pattern apart. This is called the slash and spread method. It allows me to make my pattern a little bit larger so that when I gather it together, it's the same size that it originally was. You know I love a dramatic sleeve, so I'm going to sew multiple levels of this black satin-faced elastic down the sleeve for some carefully placed volume. Now I started working on stitching the bodice together, and then I overlocked those seams after I was finished. I also pressed all of my seams flat and beautiful, even on this lightweight fabric, just use the right setting. After I had created the casing for the top of the dress, I used a safety pin to pull the ribbon through so that it could gather at the neck. The last step was to gather the skirt and sew on this black ribbon all along the hem. This is definitely one of my favorite dresses I've made in a while. It gives me Alice in Wonderland meets Sleepy Hollow with a little bit of Gunner flair. What do you guys think?